making 2020 Vision Radio your choice, your choice, your choice, your choice.
Radio.com. My radio station.
Hi, I'm Sister C of 2020 Vision Radio. Vision Radio is a non-profit making online radio station. All staff working to serve you, the listening and viewing public. As we serve, we also see the need to serve those who are not technically savvy, especially the elderly, the shut-ins, and persons with disabilities, to which end we are looking forward to take 2020 Vision to another level, of course, with your generous assistance of taking 2020 Vision Radio to the airwaves on the FM frequency. Go to our GoFundMe page, 2020 Vision Radio, and make a donation of which you can afford. Help us to help everyone in this quest. Thank you for what you're about to donate as we look forward to serving you online and in the not too distant future on 2020 Vision FM.
Thank you for listening to 2020 Vision Radio.
From Queen City, Nevis.
The Lowland Community Foundation, because we care. We are geared towards community outreach and development, youth empowerment, and entrepreneurial opportunities. The Lowland Community Foundation has sponsored and executed many projects in the St. Thomas Parish, and we will continue to serve you because we care. For pledges, donations, and more information, you are welcome to call or WhatsApp 1-869-762-5399, or you can email css.nevis5@gmail.com. That's css.nevis, the number 5@gmail.com.
For information, entertainment, and inspiration, keep listening to 2020 Vision Radio.
Legendary, promoting the vision of ordinary legends. Tune in to 2020 Vision Radio every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. with the Honorable Cleon Stapleton Simmons and Desil Hamilton.
Legendary is a show promoting the visions of ordinary legends, and I am Honorable Cleo Stapleton Simmons along with my fabulous co-host Desil Hamilton.
I am Desil Hamilton. I'm excited as well to be here for Legendary, just to uplift and enhance people and show what people in our society are doing to uplift our country and the nation.
Call in live on WhatsApp via 869-669-7312. Our direct mobile number is 766-7312 and our landline number is 469-7953. Overseas callers can call in on 917-460-2187. Legendary, live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. on 2020 Vision Radio.
Just like you. If you take a look inside, you see the great things that people do. Some things are just never said, no. Story of my life, ordinary person just like you. If you take a look inside, see the great things that people do. Changing lives day and night, but nothing I do ever makes the news. Still I have to do what's right to the King of all kings, all praises due. Yesterday I was on a train, a little boy asked me my name. He said, sir, I've seen you before, tell me who are you? Said I am a legend that you never heard of before. I said I am a lion, but you never heard me roar. I am a hero that nobody celebrates, but if one person remembers my name, that means I've made a change. I'm the man who cooks the food and feed the street people in the afternoon. I'm the lady with the broom, sweeping the halls of your son's preschool. I'm the soldier who's up all night, making sure everything's alright. And if you ask me, I'm quite fine, being an ordinary person doing what's right. Yesterday at the football game, a little girl asked me my name. She said, sir, I've seen you before, tell me who are you? I said, I am a legend that you never heard of before. She said, I am a lion, but you never heard me roar. I am a hero that nobody celebrates. But if one person remembers my name, that means on the ocean of fame, I'm an unknown sailor. I'm the percussionist playing with the wailers, the one with the shaker, the mover and shaker. My name wasn't on the front of the paper, but me not cater. Much more than the work is greater. Creation glorifies creator. So all deeds done are in the name of my maker. I am a legend that you probably never hear about. Never heard from the lion's mouth. I am a hero that nobody celebrates. But if one person remembers my name, give praise, that means I made a change. Story of my life, ordinary person just like you. If you take a look inside, you see the great things that people do. We're out here changing lives day and night, day in, day out. BBC don't show it, CNN don't show it. He's out.
The Lowland Community Foundation, because we care. We are geared towards community outreach and development, youth empowerment, and entrepreneurial opportunities. The Lowland Community Foundation has sponsored and executed many projects in the St. Thomas Parish, and we will continue to serve you because we care. For pledges, donations, and more information, you are welcome to call or WhatsApp 1-869-762-5399. Or you can email css.nevis5@gmail.com. That's css.nevis, the number 5@gmail.com.
"2020 Vision Radio."
Your 24-hour companion.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Legendary Show. So happy to be with you this evening. Of course, here on the Legendary Show, it is a show that promotes the vision of ordinary legends. Special good evening to those tuned in with us via Facebook or those listening via 2020 Vision Radio. We are indeed happy to have you with us. I wish to take this opportunity to also say a special good evening to those listening abroad, those of you in the USVI, in New York, in Canada, in the UK, and the entire diaspora. We are so happy to have you tuned in this evening. As always, I take this opportunity to say special greetings to the good folks there in St. Thomas's, my beloved constituency. I trust and hope that everyone is having a good time this evening. I use this forum to extend birthday greetings to those who are celebrating, be it a birthday or anniversary today and throughout the week, the rest of the week. Happy birthday wishes are extended to our very own Devon Cornelius. I trust that he's having a very good time this evening. Happy birthday, Devon. I also wish to extend a happy belated birthday to our good friend Michelle Slack, who is studying there in London. She's probably very cold and more than likely already asleep. But Michelle, we trust and hope that you had an excellent birthday. I also wish to extend happy belated birthday greetings to my good little friend there, the Quandra Sunshine Moving in Cotton Ground. I trust and hope that you had a wonderful day on your birthday. Happy wedding anniversary greetings are going out to Claire Joseph and her loving husband there in Jessup's Village. I trust and hope that you both will have many more years of togetherness, friendship, and love. Enjoy your evening. At this point in time, I also take this opportunity on behalf of myself, my family, and the entire Legendary team and 2020 Vision family, and I express sincerest condolences to those families who are mourning the loss of a loved one during this difficult time. I wish to make special mention of the Miss Liebert there in Barnscott. My thoughts and prayers are with her entire family. Special condolences to Mr. Joseph Liebert and Lydia and the entire family circle there in Barnscott. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. I also wish to express heartfelt sympathy to the family of George Archibald there of Garrick's Pasture in Jessops. To Desiree and the entire family, our thoughts and prayers are with you during this very difficult time. Deepest sympathy is also extended to Tessa Howell and family on the passing of your beloved father, Mr. Spencer Howell. You are indeed in our thoughts and prayers, and we trust and hope that you would find comfort in the bosom of God during this difficult time. I also extend condolences to the family of the late Rafi Wallace there in Hamilton. I trust and hope that you guys are coping and that you may also find comfort in God during this difficult time. Our thoughts and prayers are with Sandra Willett and Hyacinth and the rest of the family circle there. So this evening, I'm solo. I do apologize for the absence of my co-host, Nick Dessel Hamilton. Unfortunately, he's unable to be with us this evening, but no doubt Nick will be back next week. And so we are actually bringing you an issues show this evening. Many persons have been asking me, Cleon, when are you going to discuss some issues on Legendary? And so I did promise you that every now and again, at least once per month, we are going to take some time out to discuss some issues that are affecting us in our communities and in the entire island of Nevis. And so I am going to do some anchoring this evening as I discuss some pertinent issues. I trust and hope that we would have a lively session, and so I'm inviting everyone to tune in and to give your comments on the live feed, ask questions. I wish to inform you about the plans that I have for St. Thomas's. That is the constituency of Nevis 5. As you all know, we are approaching the elections here on Nevis, and so elections is expected to could still be this year, but more practically speaking, we are expecting it at least by next year. And so as the Nevis Reformation Party continues in its preparation for local elections, you will be hearing a lot from us. We'll be rolling out our plans for the upcoming elections, our plans to really take Nevis forward. And of course, as the representative for St. Thomas's, I will be giving you, my plans, what I would like to see, what I wish to be able to accomplish there in St. Thomas's, so I can enhance the standard of living of the good folks there in St. Thomas's. So it's just me and X-Ray this evening, but we are going to get right into the show, and we are going to start with a very interesting topic this evening. And so we want to look more specifically at Nevis 5, that is St. Thomas's, and some issues that are really affecting St. Thomas's at present. And those of you who follow me on Facebook, you will see that recently, over the past couple of days, I have put out several posts, one with the pedestrian crossing, and the pedestrian crossing there at Jessup, as well as St. Thomas's preschool and primary school. They really needed to be put back in place, and so I have in the past reached out to the police, that is the traffic department, to ask them to be mindful of that and ask them to please replace the pedestrian crossing, because of course it's an aid to assist persons to cross the road safely, and it also prevents accidents. And so I am happy and very much elated to see the Public Works Department out this week replacing the pedestrian crossing. They have already completed the one there by the Jessup's gas station, Dayton's gas station, and so they are now going over to the St. Thomas's school. So kudos to them. Of course, sometimes you have to speak up in order to get results, and so I am indeed happy that they would have listened to our cries, and now we have the crossings in place. Throughout my visits in the village of Cotton Ground, one of the concerns that constituents have raised is the retaining wall, or the boundary wall, for the Cotton Ground playfield. And those of you who are from the St. Thomas's area, you perhaps are familiar with the wall. I think when the playfield was done by NRP, as part of the project, there was a retaining wall, a fencing wall, that was put up in order to secure the premises. That wall has now fallen in a state that where it needs repair, and so the wall at present, it is indeed a hazard, because part of it has already broken down due to the soil pressing against the wall, and so the structure of the wall itself has been damaged and weakened, and the wall is practically falling down. And so a number of persons would have in one of his press releases some time back, some months ago, indicated that the wall, the retaining wall there in Cotton Ground, would be fixed. To date, nothing has been done. We are now going on 9 years since the CCM administration have been in office, and I am just simply making this plea that the ball field, the retaining wall there at the ball field, the Cotton Ground ball field, it's hazardous, it's a danger, it can fall down at any point in time and cause damage to persons, whether it be residents of Cotton Ground or visitors. It is dangerous, and it is something that ought to be fixed. Okay, so we're just gonna play a short video for those of you who are not familiar, so that you can see the wall and see the state of affairs that we have there in Cotton Ground. So there you have it. That is exactly what we are talking about, and it is quite interesting that, you know, recently, right there at the bottom of Clifton Estate in the constituency of St. Thomas's, we had On the show last week, we had Miss Annie, and Annie was here talking about some challenges she was having with the Department of Physical Planning, where they wanted her to remove, her little structure that she's putting up there as a means of shelter for the barbecue that she's doing there on her land. And it's just heart-wrenching to see that the Department of Physical Planning can pay some priority, to structures and things that are going up to the extent that they would issue enforcement and stop notice. But one have to wonder what's happening to the wall up there in the ball field, in the cotton ground play field. Does the Department of Physical Planning, the director, the powers that be, the PS, the minister, do they not see that wall? Does that wall not constitute part of the structure? Anybody care? Anybody taking their job seriously? I know they take it seriously enough to harass people, and that is the challenge that I have when we want to enforce only certain sections of the legislation when it's appeasing to us, but when it comes to other areas, then we completely neglect. And so for many years now, that structure is there. It has deteriorated. It's about to fall on somebody, and you can't find planning. Planning don't care. Planning not even issuing a notice, to anybody. The minister don't care. We don't see, any life, any activity, any movement to really rectify the situation. And so I am making this public appeal again. I know many persons would put up their white flag and say, oh, well, it's not this responsibility and it's not that responsibility. But of course it is. The ordinance give the director and the department broad powers to be responsible for infrastructure development. If you put up a fence and you don't have the requisite approval from planning, of course they come and they issue you their notice and things like that. But what about the maintenance? What about what happens when certain things fall in dilapidative state to the point that they are hazardous? Where is the Department of Physical Planning in all of this? You don't see them. And so this is what we are talking about. These are some of the issues that are affecting us here in St. Thomas's, and we want people to be able to do their jobs and to do their jobs effectively. I am not using this forum to attack anyone personally. But I do believe that if people are empowered by the legislation to perform certain duties, that they should really perform them and perform them to the best of their ability. So I am just giving a reminder, a shout out, whatever you want to call it, on behalf of the good people there in Cotton Ground and St. Thomas's, and to let the public, as well as the government, the Department of Planning, the minister, whoever is responsible, or whether they all are responsible collectively, that the wall there in Cotton Ground by the ball field, it needs to be fixed. It's a hazard at any point in time. It could fall down on somebody, so it needs to be a priority. The people are very fed up of promises. You need to get down to action and do something about the wall. It's an easy fix. I don't understand why St. Thomas's continues to be neglected. We see the government up and down the place, all in Brownhill, in Bath, now in Butlers, putting up retaining walls to persons, and something like this where it can affect the entire community. This has been neglected, and so we are saying that it's time for them to pay attention to this wall. We do not want any deaths. We do not want any serious injuries. Prevention is always better than cure. And so I'm just making this appeal on behalf of the good people there in Cotton Ground. And as we move on now to the next topic, yes, I'm looking at the comments, and I see, yes, Daily, I do agree with you that, it's very disrespectful and disgraceful that they have not sought to rectify the situation there in cotton grown. Okay, it's disheartening, and someone really needs to be held accountable for that. Now, as we continue the discussion, I want to take some time out this evening to speak about an issue, and an issue that is very, very dear to me, and one that is very concerning, because as everyone is aware, we are in the middle of a pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, and we have been in this now for going on 2 years. And one of the things that I have come to realize is that despite the economic plight that Nevis is presently facing with the loss of jobs and the high unemployment rates, we continue to see an increase in taxes. And some people may very well argue that with the loss of revenue from the tourism industry, with the closure of hotels and things like that, that the government needed to be able to make up somewhat. And whilst I accept that point, we must be able to have regard to the times that we are in. I think at this point our people are suffering. We are most vulnerable, and to see that a government who claim that it is a caring government would actually use this period to implement various taxes, it is very concerning to me. And I just want to say, I hope people are listening and that they are paying attention, because at the end of the day, we all are feeling it. We are feeling it in our pockets. Some people have not worked for 2 years. They don't know where their next dollar is going to come from. And despite being in that situation without any plans for economic relief, and this is a very serious situation that we are facing here in Nevis, because as an attorney, I have persons come to me every single day with problems, and a lot of times it's women and young women, and they're not working. They are unemployed despite their best efforts in trying to seek employment. It is very difficult to do so during this time. And so persons are suffering a lot of abuse, financial hardship, simply because, they have been out of work. They can't provide for themselves and for their children. And despite that, we have a government who implemented a charge, and I coin it as a fuel surcharge, because that is what it is, on the water bill, to the extent that if it is that you are a small business owner and you have a small business registered, you have to pay water. Your water bill has a automatic charge on it of 75 EC dollars. Okay, 75 EC dollars. That is $25, less than $100. And for something as simple as water, and we all know that the water bill normally is the least you would have to pay, okay, because normally it's by usage. And so if you're a small business, it doesn't matter. Let's imagine you are a one business. Maybe you just have a little store in the heart of Charleston with a little bathroom. You may use the bathroom maybe once or twice per day, and you don't really use a lot of water. You're not a kitchen or a huge restaurant or a hotel, just one little man trying to do a little hustle. And here it is that you have a whopping $75 on your water bill, a mandatory charge, something that you didn't even have the opportunity to weigh in on. Nobody asks you any questions, but you wake up one day and you went from paying maybe a little $20 to $25 per month, or even $50, to paying a whopping $75 in addition to what you actually use. And I'm just simply saying that has to be disheartening. Okay, it is disheartening for me who own I have a little small 2x4 office there in Charlestown, where I barely use water, and every single month, you have to find that $75 in addition to what you're accustomed to use. So now just imagine I'm paying $100 plus almost $200 for water. And it has to be insane. Don't talk about households, okay? You men and women who have a water meter in their homes, you now have an automatic fuel charge of surcharge, because that's what it is, on your water bill for a whopping $25. And in Nevis, we kind of passive, nobody making noise, everybody just lie down and accept, people don't talk about these things. But at the end of the day, I know a lot of people out there suffering and really feeling it, because I don't mind if you're paying for what you actually use, but to take into consideration the fact that sometimes your water bill may not even be $10 or $15, but here it is, you have to pay this additional tax on your water bill. So regardless as to what you use, that $25 is there and you have to pay it. I know persons who have their houses and they're not living here. They might be abroad, and so no one is in the house, no water is being used, and they still have to pay that $25. And it has to hurt. It has to hurt us as a people to see that in the middle of a pandemic that the government went and increased water bills so drastically without consultation. Not by 100% for most of us, not 200, almost 300%. And it is absolutely outrageous. I feel the cry of the people. And I just can't believe that something like this could actually happen in Nevis. In addition to that, I want you to be mindful that late last year, there was an increase of the fuel surcharge for solid waste on your electricity bill. And so here it is, you have surcharges on your water bill, increase on your electricity bill, and yet still many persons out there are not working. So how are people really supposed to cope in these difficult times? And there's no empathy, there is no compassion. And we want to compare that to other countries such as Barbados, where President Mia Mottley indicated early on, since last year, in her budget address, that Barbados would not see any new taxes because it is unconscionable to do so during this time. And one have to ask themselves, well, where is the love? Where is the empathy? Where is the compassion of the CCM-led administration, where we have now seen all of these increases? It's not only on the utility bills. I want to take some time out to speak to you now about the recently introduced planning regulations and the amendment to the planning legislation. And for those of you who don't know, if you want to build a house or to do an expansion to your existing house, the fees that you used to pay, they have now all increased. So if it is that to build a 3-bedroom house, depending on the square footage, the application fee was $500. That has now significantly increased, almost by 50%. And so again, we are in a pandemic. People are not working, but we continue to see the Napoleonistic style of government, where you tax, and you tax to death. But the difference here is that perhaps in Napoleon's time, you did not have wastage. But in our times, we have so much wastage. Now, when one have to choose between having an increase in your utility bill or in your planning application for a house, or even in making an application for your business license, if you're in the financial services industry, those of you who are corporate service providers would have seen a drastic increase in the licensing fee just to get a license to be a registered agent. And with all of these new taxes and increases and all of that, I am simply saying that we have to be mindful that we are in the middle of a pandemic. I think if a lot of us had to choose between having our water bill stay at where it was without these additional taxes and having a wall fence put up at our homes, many of us, if we were consulted, would have preferred not to have these walls all over the place, but to have our water bill subsidized, our bills subsidized. And these are questions that Nigerians have to ask themselves as we approach an upcoming election. The decision is yours. You have to decide the fate of Nevis, whether you're going to continue with an administration who, with reckless spending policies, no sensible economic plan or economic relief or recovery plan, no way of knowing how they are going to get Nevis out of the plight that it is in. And you have to choose whether you're going to continue with this facade of people just looking after themselves and their supporters, much to the detriment of the masses, or whether you're going to choose and vote for a government that cares and a government that is going to put the economic policies in place to drive the economy, to create jobs, to increase the standard of living of people. And I want to remind everyone listening to me that the NRP has a proven track record of doing this, okay? I always believe that the NRP-led Nevis Island administration always perform better in adversity. They know how to better manage. And we would have seen that in 2008 when, there was that financial crisis when the entire world was in a state of depression. And we saw Joseph Parry, through the NRP-led administration, was able to still keep Nevis afloat in a sense by providing jobs. When Four Seasons closed, a number of persons who worked at the Four Seasons, they were able to seek employment in the civil service or the public sector. Now, I can recall last year during the budget debate, the Premier confidently and boastfully said that the civil service could not hire any new persons. Okay, he indicated that the service had reached its maximum. It was exhausted, and so they were unable to assist the private sector with providing jobs for persons. Shortly after the conclusion of the budget debate, and very early in 2021, we saw that there were appointments of advisors and things like that. And one have to wonder. Good evening, caller. We have a call?
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. I had a question. With all the new taxes that's being collected, I understand that the Newcastle police station, along with the Alexander Hamilton project, is still not yet complete. And I was wondering, what is your take on this? And could you share thoughts with us about this? And if this is actually true, because these projects have been going on since for a very long time, basically. If you could share your feedback, I would appreciate that.
Thank you. Yes, I can. And so yes, we have a number of unfinished projects here in Nevis, one being the Newcastle police station as well as the Alexandra hospital. And my take on it really is that it's really sad because there needs to be accountability for wastage. I mean, if you're going to have a budget and you're going to budget to do a project, let us take, for example, the hospital. Then you must have timelines, I foresee, as to when you would be able to complete the wing, and you must have a budget for that so that you would obviously know whether you're operating in budget. The lack of completion of projects is not surprising to this CCM-led administration. We have seen it all along. Where they start things, they stop. They start the Island Main Road from Cotton Ground going over to St. James's, and then as soon as they reach just before they get to Owali, that project is stopped and they don't continue it. So we always having a start and stop. But in that, it creates wastage because there will be overspending, overheads, things that you have to go back and remedy, just as we are seeing with the hospital at present. The hospital is now going on 4 or 5 years. They have been up there trying to complete this wing or the extension to the Alexandra Hospital, which was really supposed to be a state-of-the-art facility. And to date, I was at the hospital, I think, last week. And when I look at the building, it is still in the first phase of construction. There is nothing. And it has to be disheartening that, this government really cannot get it together. You cannot even complete simple projects. Yes, you start them and you're unable to finish them. And we all would have been aware of the Prime Minister's address, where he indicated how much millions and millions of dollars that his government, the federal government, would have gifted to Nevis as part of Nevis share in order to complete these projects. We have the Mondo track over there in St. John's Parish. The Mondo track was supposed to be a state-of-the-art Olympic stadium. And to date, that has not been finished. And we all know the rhetoric is going to be, because of COVID and because of this. But the truth is, we all very well know, COVID and no COVID, the Mondo track more than likely would have stayed in the exact state that it is in. And this is not surprising because, again, it is the lack of focus. And I want people to understand why there is a lack of focus. And I am going to use my own personal experience so that people can appreciate that it's very, very difficult to serve two masters. Now, I am an attorney by profession. I have a practice dubbed CTS Simmons Legal Chambers. When I started my practice, I started it really as a side hustler, part-time thing, because I was working a full-time job, first at Bank of Nevis and then later at Bank of Nevis International. Now, it was very difficult for me, challenging many times for me to be able to dedicate time and resources towards running a full-time practice as well as maintaining a full-time job with the bank. One had to suffer, and unfortunately it was my firm, because I was not there. I couldn't be in two places at the same time. I can't be in my law firm and still be at the bank. And so I had to choose one. And because I work a full-time job at the bank from 8:30 to 4:30, it means that all of my time really was being spent in the bank. So even though I used to go to my practice during the lunchtime, after work, and some days during vacation time and things like that. I really was not there, so it did not have that impact. It survived, yes, but it perhaps could have been thriving more had I been in the practice full time. And it is the same situation where we have our elected ministers for the NIA being a part of the federal cabinet. Now, when NRP first raised this issue, the focus really was on the double compensation. But I think that is not the point. That is not the point that I wish to highlight and emphasize. The point that I wish to highlight and emphasize is the focus, the attention. You cannot serve two masters. It is virtually impossible for three ministers of the NIA, and I can call them out: Alexis Jeffers, Honorable Alexis Jeffers, Honorable Eric Evelyn, and the Honorable Premier, to have to sit and hold ministerial portfolios in St. Kitts, whilst at the same time still holding ministerial portfolios in Nevis. The effect of that is that they cannot dedicate the focus and the attention that is needed in order to have fully functioning ministries here in Nevis. And so what we see is that a lot of the industries suffer. We see health suffering. A lot of times I wonder if the Ministry of Health, despite having a senior minister and a junior minister, if it is on autopilot. Because you don't see anything going on. You go to the Alexandra Hospital and you wonder, who's running this? Who's managing health? We look at solid waste. I mentioned that I was in the House at least 3 times throughout the year to debate solid waste bill. But when you look over at the state of the dump, one have to wonder, where is the focus? And the reality of the situation is that the ministers really cannot focus on their ministerial portfolios in St. Kitts and at the same time focus on that in Nevis. It is hard, it is difficult, it is impossible. One will suffer. And who's suffering? Nevisians. Nevisians, you are suffering because these ministers have to go to St. Kitts at least 4 times per week. They run full-time ministries in St. Kitts. The Minister of Agriculture has a full-time portfolio there. He has to be there. He has to work. And so, if he's over in St. Kitts at least 4 times per week, then we must ask ourselves, well, what is happening to the Ministry of Agriculture here on Nevis? Where is the minister? Who is in control? Where is the focus? Is it on the PS? The PS can only do so much, and we all know civil servants, no disrespect, but we all know how people work and operate in the civil service, especially when there isn't that managerial guidance. And so Nevisians really, when they go to the polls for the upcoming election, these are the type of considerations that they must make. It's not just about the job. It is not just about the salary. It is about the focus and attention. Those of you who have children, just imagine you have young children, and because you're working all of 2 and 3 and 4 jobs, you do not have the time to devote to their upbringing and their development. So naturally, they will suffer in some areas. It's the same thing. It is the same concept. And so what we are saying is that this cannot be the way forward for Nevis for the next 5 years. Something has to give. And I am making this public appeal to Nivigans, when you go to the polls, that has to be a determining factor. That has to be something that you take into consideration, because at the end of the day, you are suffering. You are suffering. You are suffering, and the results of your suffering is increased taxation. Taxation without merits. Because if it is that someone had the ability to focus solely on Nevis and focus on their ministries and focus on putting the necessary policies and plans in place to enhance their ministries, then we would not be suffering today. And that is what is needed. You need a team. You need to elect an administration who can focus their attention on developing Nevis. And it is as simple as that. I cannot put it or break it down anymore for people. It is simple. The present administration, by having 3 of their senior ministers, including the Premier, as a part of the federal cabinet, means that Nevis is being neglected. And so Nevis cannot then move forward in the way that it should, because of the lack of focus and attention. And so when we go to the polls, we must vote against this. We want people to be able, when they have their portfolios, when they have their jobs, to earn their salary and to be in a position to work for the betterment of all Nivigans. That is what people get paid for. When you elect people to work and to serve, and that is what the civil service is. It's where people serve. That is why it's called the public service, the keyword service. Sometimes we forget it. And people operate as if they are not providing a service. But that is what it is. It's called the civil service or the public service for a reason. You are electing people to serve and to look out for your best interests. But when they don't even have the opportunity to do that, simply because they have to be elsewhere, well, how can we then say as Nivigans that we are getting quality service or the best service? It is virtually impossible. And so, these are the things that people must take into consideration. Young people, when you go to the polls, it is not just about the peace money. It is not just about the bribes here and there. It is not about promises. You have to look at the situation and look at it realistically to find out whether it is making sense. Yes, Auntie Patsy, the agriculture department and agriculture is being run by Banky, and that is true. Because without Banky, I don't know where they would be today. And that is the point. But Banky is not an elected minister. There is a minister. And so therein lies the problem. There's no drive. There's no development. And that is why we are suffering so much here in this country. Because the people who you went to the polls to vote for do not have the time to focus on Nevis affairs. And that cannot sit right. It cannot sit right with Nivigans here. It cannot sit right with Nivigans overseas. And so, Birdman, that is the reason why you're seeing all these start and stop projects, with a lot of waiting. You can't finish it because the focus and the attention is not there. I wish to take some time out this evening to talk about the offshore industry or the financial sector. And it's one that is concerning to me because I believe it's an area where I have spent the last 6 years of my life being in the financial services as a banker and a compliance officer. And in recent times, so those of you who don't know, we have seen the departure of international banks. First, it was RBC, the Royal Bank of Canada, along with the merger of RBTT, who would have departed. I think that was 2 years ago. And now we have First Caribbean, who have decided, listen, it is time for us to backlist. It is time for us to migrate from the Caribbean. And now we are going to have National Bank, who have put in their bid in order to take over First Caribbean franchise. And so essentially, we are not going to have an international banking presence here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And that has to be concerning, because at the end of the day, right, our local banks and Bank of Nevis, as well as the National St. Kitts and Nevis and Anguilla National Bank, they are really owned by the state. The state have the majority shareholding capacity. That is the government. And so when you look at that, one has to wonder, because at the end of the day, what it does mean is that these institutions are going to become very vulnerable to abuse by our local governments. You're going to see a lot of loans being lent to governments. A lot of time these loans are not paid back and paid back within a timely manner. And it is concern, because where is the outlet? Where is that international standard that could really raise the bar in terms of banking here in St. Kitts and Nevis? We are not seeing that. And once you see international banks and companies and corporations start to leave your shore, they call it de-risking. But de-risking simply means that the sector or the region is no longer appealing. And once you see a sector is no longer appealing to do business, it simply means that at some point in time, it's going to have an adverse effect on development here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And so, someone asks if I can explain the duties of a compliance officer. Well, a compliance officer is the person within the financial institution who is the watchdog. That person holds an advisory position, and their job is to maintain a balance between the regulatory requirement, what the law requires the financial institution to comply with, and that of the business. So you have to basically be able to marry the business objectives with what the law requires. And so it's basically a watchdog just to ensure that the institution or the banks is complying with the requisite policies and legislation. And the legislation is geared to preventing corruption, anti-money laundering, and terrorist financing. And so that is the role and function of a compliance officer. The issue here in St. Kitts and Nevis is that our financial services industry is it is being now placed in a position where it may be at risk for deterioration. And I say that because a few weeks ago, the new International Banking Ordinance was passed in the House of Assembly. It had its first reading. And the International Banking Ordinance, or the law, as you all may know, we had, for the past 30 years, we had one international bank in Nevis. That is the Bank of Nevis International. Of recent times, we have had 2 additional banking licenses being granted. That is Merchant Bank as well as Hamilton Reserve Bank. And so those are additional international banks that have come to our shores. I am told that there are additional banks in the pipeline who have applied for a license. And so it appears that international banks are finding the shores of St. Kitts and Nevis, more so Nevis, because we don't have any international banks on St. Kitts at present, a lucrative destination. And one have to ask why. But not why in the sense as if there's anything bad, because if it is properly managed, it can bring significant diversification and development to the shores of Nevis or St. Kitts and Nevis. But the issue or the challenge that I have is that these international banks are not regulated by the central bank. They operate in the same way as commercial banks. The only difference is that they cannot do business with residents of Nevis. And a resident of Nevis being a person, an individual, or a company that is actually residing and operating in Nevis. Now, if it is that you are living or operating in St. Kitts, then you are not considered a resident for the purposes of the legislation, and therefore these banks can do business with you. Similarly, if you are a citizen of Nevis but you reside overseas, then you can do business with these international banks because you therefore would not be captured under the legislation as a resident. And so these banks can do business, they can issue loans, have offer depository services, credit cards, and what have you. The difficulty here is that as the government seeks in its initiative to expand this particular sector, because there isn't that regulatory oversight from the central bank, which is the core banking regulator that governs banking in the Eastern Caribbean, then it leaves an avenue for exploitation. And I'm going to explain why I say this. International banks are governed by the Financial Services Regulatory Commission. In Nevis, it is the Nevis branch of the Financial Services, or what we call FSRC. The challenge with having, which is a subset of the Ministry of Finance here on Nevis, the challenge with that is that a lot of times the persons who comprise the financial services regulatory branch. They are civil servants, and many of them don't have banking expertise nor experience, and I can say that, okay, because it is the truth. They may have experience in terms of regulation, but not necessarily core banking principles. Many of them have not even worked in a bank. And so what is happening here is that you have these banks, international banks, they do international business, they do global business, they have various products and services, not just your usual depository products or checking products, not those simple ones. They can have complex products. For example, they can have mortgages, bespoke mortgages, huge investment portfolios. And so without a central governing body really regulating the activities of these international banks, they basically can get away with a lot of things that commercial banks such as our local banks cannot get away with. And I want to be careful here because I do not want anyone to get the impression that I am saying that international banks are not good for Nevis. I find that they are very good. I worked with one. They can be very instrumental in driving the economies and bringing developments and business to our shores. And so I do not want that to be misconstrued. The challenge that I am having is that these, if we are going to increase that sector, the offshore sector, then it must be properly managed and regulated. And I do find that at present, we simply do not have the resources within the Financial Services Department to properly manage and regulate the offshore banking industry here in Nevis. And so what we find happening a lot of times is that there are a lot of conflicts, there are a lot of undermining, and a lot of risk exposure by these entities to the financial service industry. And it has gotten to the point where I believe that if somebody, whether it be the government, the central bank, or some other agency, do not wake up and start smelling the coffee and start really looking at these industry or these banks, it's going to significantly undermine the financial services industry to the extent where the risk of St. Kitts and Nevis becoming blacklisted again may very well become a reality. We don't want that. We do not prefer it, but it is what it is. And so we have to look at that area and we have to look at it as a cause for concern. Now, many persons may say, well, Cleone, how can we help? How can we prevent this? And there are many ways. Personally, I believe that the time has come now for the regulation of these banks to not be under the umbrella of just another government department or the subset of the financial of the Ministry of Finance. Sorry, the time has perhaps come for legislation to be implemented to create an agency that is outside of the umbrella of the finance department in order to regulate this particular industry. One can say it may be prudent to put the offshore or the international banking sector under the umbrella of the central bank. I do not quite agree with that, simply because the central bank, from since its inception, never really dealt with international banking. But I do believe that there should be some sort of intervention from the central bank. So perhaps a hybrid approach may be best suited in order to deal with the offshore industry here in Nevis, where you may need a collaborative effort from the central bank, from the Financial Services Regulatory Commission, as well as the public and private sector. And so I think the best way to deal with that would actually be to create an agency, okay, that would be able to deal, and an agency at the federal level that would be able to properly manage, supervise, and regulate the offshore industry. I see we have just going back to the comments here, have a question which says, given that you just explained about the banking and financial services sector, how would this affect the potential investor to the island? Would the risk of investigating increase? It certainly would. If it is that we have the laws in place, but the sector is still not adequately being supervised and managed. And of course, it would open the jurisdiction to scrutiny from the international agencies such as the EU, such as OFAC, FinCEN. And as we all know, in order for the financial services to thrive, we have to create that nexus where we are able to somewhat negotiate and barter and have mutual exchanges and respect with international agencies. A lot of the laws that govern the offshore banking sector and the financial sector are actually international laws. We have FATCA. We also have I can't quite remember the name of the other one. Right now we have things like GDPR in order to comply with, common standards reporting, and those are just reporting, being able to report. FATCA is being able to report on U.S. residents and citizens who may have assets such as bank accounts within the jurisdiction of St. Kitts and Nevis. Annually, the financial institutions have to provide a report to the IRS on the taxation status for taxation purposes of the assets of these persons. That is the monies that they have in their bank accounts above a certain threshold. And so, we see these things are international laws, but of course, because of our mutual agreements with the international countries such as the US, we do have these reporting duties that we must do in order to satisfy and maintain good relationships with the US and the European countries. And it's very, very important, because at the end of the day, we do not want to be blacklisted. And by blacklisting, what I mean is where the international community, for example, the US, put us on a list which states that we are a jurisdiction that is extremely high risk, and they do not recommend that their citizens or business entities conduct business with these jurisdictions. And so we have been there before, and we don't necessarily want to ever go back there again in life, because it makes it very difficult for us to trade and to do business with international companies. It would be very, very damning to our economy, especially taking into consideration the fact that our economy at this point is very weak and vulnerable. And so we are trying to avoid that at all costs. Now, there are many things that can be done in order to ensure that we have checks and balances, and that the overall structure of our financial services industry is not compromised. Judy asks if FATCA is still operating in our federation. Yes, it is. And it would continue to operate for a very, very long time. Birdman, you asked, what does the US do for Nevis? The truth is, right, it is not just what the US do for Nevis, because if you're talking about trading on financial markets, you cannot trade no matter where you are in the world. The US is so powerful that you cannot trade without going through the US. You cannot conduct business in the financial world without going through the United States of America. And that is just how it is. Okay? So, whilst the US, we may say the US doesn't do anything for us physically, in order for us to be able to trade and do business with international communities in Asia, in Europe, any part of the world, we have to go through the US. And so that is why we have to ensure that we are able to maintain our international standards and best practices, and we comply with international laws such as FACTA and CSR and GDPR. We have to just make sure that we keep that alliance, that avenue, and form that alliance and keep it open and trustworthy. Now, the important thing is that over the years, the CCM-led administration has beat their chests and said that they were able to implement the integrity in public life legislation. And whilst that may be so, and I'm going to touch on the integrity in public life legislation in a bit, that is not necessarily the legislation that is going to prevent us from coming under international scrutiny. All respectable jurisdictions, once they have an intention to do business that are not influenced or can be undermined by corruption or anti-money laundering, all respectable jurisdictions have now implemented anti-bribery legislation, anti-bribery and corruption legislation. ABC it is called. St. Kitts and Nevis have not done so yet, but eventually they would have to, because the truth is, what the international world is concerned about is how vulnerable or susceptible third world countries or developing countries such as ourselves to corruption, money laundering, terrorist financing, weapon proliferation. How vulnerable or susceptible are these jurisdictions to these kind of illegal activities, drug trafficking? And if it is that they deem us to be very vulnerable, susceptible, then they would not want to do business with us. Okay, because we will pose a risk to their financial institution. And just to break down the point, in Ard Birdman, if you're in the US, in order for you to send money to Nevis, then you have to go through some sort of US correspondent bank. Okay? Now, when that bank, whether it's an intermediary bank or not, or just a correspondent bank, when that bank have a relationship with a bank in Nevis that does not take anti-money laundering seriously, that allows corruption, promotes corruption, allows persons to bring what is coined as dirty money, or money that is obtained from illegal means into their financial system, then it naturally would have an adverse effect on that correspondent bank. Okay? That bank don't necessarily have to answer. The U.S. correspondent bank does not have to answer to the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis or the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, but they do have to answer to the United States Treasury. And we all know the type of fines that the U.S. Treasury OFAC can place on these banks. We hear it all the time in the news. And so once a U.S. bank have to pay fines, and in some cases, once they go under investigation, it simply means that the integrity of that U.S. bank is compromised to the extent that they cannot perform their duties as they normally would. And so that is the risk. And that is the reason why some international banks would say, listen, we cannot have correspondent banking relationship with these banks in jurisdictions that are vulnerable or susceptible to money laundering, because they pose a significant risk to us, and we cannot afford to pay the penalties that are imposed on us by the U.S. government. And so what that does is that it makes it very, very difficult for us to exchange, to trade, to convert money. And that is what we need to do, especially in this world through and post COVID-19. And so it can have devastating effects here for us in St. Kitts and Nevis. So the time has perhaps come for us to really start to look at having some means of putting the legislative framework in place that would strengthen the offshore sector and the financial services here in Nevis. And it goes beyond just having anti-money laundering laws in place. There is need, the time is ripe now for anti-bribery and corruption legislation. But because of our political landscape, and because of the fact that we sometimes use measures such as bribery as a means in order to win elections, I believe that the government is somewhat afraid to take that bold step in order to pass those type of legislation, because once you do, you are now putting the jurisdiction at a level where it is coming in sync with international regulations and international expectations and standards. And that is something that needs to be done. We can delay, we can beat around the bush, but at some point in time we are going to have to get there. And it is best that we start putting that framework in place sooner rather than later, because the post-COVID-19 world would mean that there would be enhanced scrutiny on smaller jurisdictions such as St. Kitts and Nevis and other developing states of the Caribbean. Now, having said that, I promise to go back to the public integrity legislation. Now, that legislation was passed a few years ago, and there has now been established a Public Integrity Life Commission. Public Life Integrity Commission. That's what it is, right, Ronaldon? Yes. And so we have the commission in place. Integrity in Public Life Commission. Yes, that's what it is. And the commission is in place, and the commission really, the legislation is in place. The commission has been enforced. We have regulations. And one of the owners of that particular legislation, or the requirement, is that senior public servants have to declare their assets annually. And senior public servants mean PS, permanent secretaries, senior managers, directors, members of parliament, and what have you. The difficulty that I have is that the focus of the legislation tends to be only on declaration of assets. And the legislation is so wide that it gives the commission the power to investigate abuse of public funds. And so all of these wastage that we see happening, the commission is empowered by the legislation in order to conduct investigations and to hold persons responsible. Where you have evidence of malfeasance or abuse of maladministration or abuse of public funds, then the commission is empowered to conduct investigations to ensure that those things are not happening, almost like a commissioner of inquiry. But that is not the case here, because that is not the focus. And one have to wonder why it is not the focus here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And that is simply because if you look at the composition of the Integrity in Public Life Commission itself, and I'm going to be very careful here, but I'm going to be bold because I'm going to speak some facts and people may not necessarily like it. It is not my intention to offend anybody, but when you see things, you have to call them out for what it is. So this administration has put together a commission, and the commission is comprised of Mr. Ricardo Keynes, who is the chairman of the commission. I am not defaming anybody, so I can call names because it's factual. It is something that is factual. Mr. Alfred Tyrrell, I'm not sure what he is, but he's a member of the commission, and Mr. Sidney Newton, and I believe there's a secretary and a compliance officer, and so that is the commission for the Nevis branch of the Integrity in Public Life Commission. Now, I want you to bear with me. I believe that within the spirit of the legislation and by all intents and purposes, the requirement for the Integrity in Public Life Commission, I believe it was the intentions were there for it to really be able to shed some light and to ensure that there is no corruption or any abuse of office, compromising of the integrity of public office. The challenge that I have is with the composition of the commission itself, because here it is that the very chairman of the Integrity in Public Life Commission is the landlord for the NIA. I want to repeat this, and I want to repeat this very solemnly. The chairman of the Integrity in Public Life Commission here on Nevis is the landlord for the Nevis Island Administration. What I mean by that is that he offers some space within his building where he rents to the NIA. At present, the Department of Environmental Health as well as the Health Promotion Unit is within that particular building. Now, naturally, if it is that you're renting to the NIA, then you would obviously collect you will collect your rent, you will collect fees, you will collect monies. And so if it is that the commission, as envisioned by the legislation, was supposed to be this independent body who is able to conduct investigations where there is an abuse, to stand out and stand up for integrity and uphold integrity, how then can the chairman, who have a vested interest by virtue of him renting office spaces to the government, and that is now a direct conflict and an apparent bias, how can the chairman really be said to stand independent? Surely there's a conflict. And so how can one expect that this commission, with so many conflicts and underlying interests, really stand up independently to uphold integrity in public life? And if one was to ask me, I would say boldly that it appears that the commission itself, the composition of the commission, really lacks integrity, because there is apparent and inherent conflict of interest, apparent biases. So if it is that the commission was called upon under the the enactment to do an investigation for public abuse of public funds, maladministration, as coined in, I believe, Section 5. If the chairman has a vested interest because he's conducting business with the NIA, I want you, the good people of Nevis, to tell me whether that chairman of that commission can really stand independently and conduct an impartial investigation. I would say that it is impossible because there is an inherent and apparent bias. He has an interest. There is a vested interest, and that interest would somewhat camouflage any attempts to really uphold integrity here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And as one person said on the feed, under the present administration, there is nothing named conflict. Well then, having this commission in place really is a waste of time because it serves no purpose other than to collect data and information from senior public servants, because it really cannot fulfill its purpose if it is that the very own board or body, the commission, has direct conflicting interests. It doesn't make sense. And so sometimes when I see the premier beat himself on the chest and put up his chest and say, oh, well, we bought the integrity in public life and we have a commission in place, I sometimes have to sit and wonder and ask myself, really? Because the very composition of the commission itself undermines the integrity of the public service, because there is an illusion of independence but not real independence. And so these are things that our people have to be concerned about. The body itself is not an independent body because of the interest, the conflict, the underlying conflict. And it doesn't stay with the chairman alone, other members too. If we take a look at Mr. Newton, Mr. Newton is the general manager for the credit union. And I'm not knocking anybody. I'm just stating facts, okay? If I am incorrect, I stand to be corrected, but I am simply stating facts. And we all know the relationship between the Department of Land and Housing, and the credit union. As a matter of fact, the credit union really is the institution that fund a lot of these loans that persons who go through land and housing to get houses. They are the main institution that provides the financing for these. So again, here we have another conflict where you have the general manager of this institution who does business with a government agency, but he is part of this independent commission. Is there really independence? Can they really stand to be impartial with all of these vested interests? And so one have to ask the question, whether the integrity in public life commission, whether it really just stands to be on paper to give a false illusion, or whether it is an independent body. It cannot be independent with so many competing and conflicting interests. There is indeed a presumption of bias. And don't get me wrong, I get on with all of these people, but I am just saying that, it is not right, it is wrong, and I do believe as well-intended and well-spirited as the integrity in public life legislation may have been, and as well-intended and well-spirited the commission, their visions and objectives are by these competing interests and apparent biases. And I perhaps failed to mention that the chairman is also the lawyer for the NCCU. And you see, it's a big mix-up. It's a big mix-up filled with conflicts and things that would otherwise prevent the commission from really having the requisite standing and independence that it needs at this present point in time. And I leave that to the good people of Nevis to make a deciding factor or determination as to whether the integrity in public life, both the legislation and the commission, really, whether it makes sense and whether it is effective and whether it is independent and whether it can really do what the legislation or the enactment and is empowering it to do. That is for the good people of Nevis to decide. But what I will say is that there are too many competing and conflicting interests for the body to be deemed as independent and impartial. And I'm just going to look at the feed to see if we have any questions. I see some comments here. Auntie Judy said, Lord Jesus, you're exposing some things. Please open up Nevis people's eyes. Yes, I hope people's eyes are open and they are looking, because a lot of times you hear the chatter and you know, people glorifying these things to say, oh, we have done something. But you have to look at the adequacy and the efficiency of what they are doing and ask yourself, does it make sense? Is it time for people to open up their eyes and to stop be fooled? Okay? We cannot continue along this line where we have on blinders and we just seeing things. We have to open up our eyes and ask questions and ask ourselves, does this make sense? How does this affect us? And so we are going to continue to have wastage, Birdman. We are going to continue to have abuse of public funds, because the watchdog that is put in place cannot adequately and efficiently perform its duties simply because the watchdog itself hands tied up, them conflicted. And that is the reality. Now, I wish to go a little bit further and to simply touch on another topic this evening. And we want to know look at some developments that are taking place in the St. Thomas's area. We see that recently we had the opening of the Belmont facility there with the restaurants and the small business hub. Kudos to the mastermind behind that development, as it did bring some welcoming economic activity to the St. Thomas's area. And we are quite happy, and so we say kudos to Dion Daniel and his team for bringing that. Just across from Dion, we see the park that the Taiwanese government initiated and perhaps funded. We see that is almost coming to fruition. It's almost being completed. I am told that we can expect a grand opening very shortly. I'm not going to say much on that other than, as the area representative for St. Thomas's, we welcome all developments, and whether it be economic or recreational, to the area of St. Thomas's, because we know that they are going to provide some well-needed jobs to persons within the constituency. And so you have to give the jacket. We have some good things going on there with the completion of the park, as well as the completion of the business hub there in St. Thomas's. And as we continue to look at the parish of St. Thomas's over the past years has really been the economic hub of Nevis, because we have the world-renowned Four Seasons Hotel and many other hotels and outlets and things that we can be proud of there in St. Thomas's. We can boast of 2 international banks. And so St. Thomas's, really we're seeing a lot of activity taking place there in St. Thomas's, whether it be through partnership with international agencies or governments or through private partnerships. We are very grateful for the development that is taking place in St. Thomas's. I just want to say that in light of that, St. Thomas's within itself, in terms of infrastructural development, has been neglected. So we have the businesses, yes, but in terms of infrastructure now, that things that need to be put in place now to attract more investors, and also to ensure that the good people of St. Thomas's are comfortable. We need to see some further development in terms of the roads, and I speak about Cotton Ground because I am from Cotton Ground. I live in Cotton Ground. I still live in Cotton Ground. I choose to raise my children in Cotton Ground because it is very dear to my heart. The Island Main Road, the main road there in Cotton Ground to the entire village, it needs some care and attention, and that is something that once the NRP is elected to government, that is an area I can promise the people of Cotton Ground that we will be looking into to see how we can really develop that road and enhance it. I know it needs some widening, and these things were in the pipeline during the former NRP-led administration under the guidance of Mr. Joseph Parry. And so we are going to continue those plans. Cotton Ground within itself has a serious drainage problem that the constituency, many of you have spoken to me about it. I have seen it for myself because, like I said, I live there. And so those things I can promise you will be addressed, and simply because I know the people, you need it. You need proper drainage system. We need to understand the flow of the water there in Cotton Ground. It is causing a problem, and no one has really taken the time out to, within the last 9 years, to really look at the problem. Every year you go into the house and you debate, you listen to the debate, and there is no budgetary, there is nothing in the budget to really do anything major in the St. Thomas's area. And so I want the good people of St. Thomas's to understand, because I hear them coming talking about all 5, but when they say all 5, you have to stand up and ask them, all 5 where? What have you done for us? Okay, that is the question that you need to ask. I see some people buzzing around making noise talking about, vote for me. If I am elected, I will do this, I will do that, I will do what have you. All I am going to say to the good people of St. Thomas's is that the CCM-led administration is in government now. It has been now going on 9 years, almost 10 years. And you have not been a priority. And so, when people come with their promises, all I want you to ask them is simple. Why can't you do what you are promising to do the next election now? Simple question. What is stopping you from doing, since you're in government, you have 3 federal seats, you have the St. Thomas's seat, you have 4 seats in the NIA. What is stopping you from doing what you claim you will do next election, if you win the St. Thomas's seat, since you're in government already, what is stopping you from doing it? No. I don't think that there should be anything that is preventing anybody from paying attention to St. Thomas's, yet St. Thomas's continues to be neglected. And so, all I want to say to you, the good people of St. Thomas's, when people come to you, don't be afraid to ask them questions. They don't have to wait. Ask them, what is stopping you from doing it now? Okay? Simple question. Now, as we speak about St. Thomas's, I want to make the people of St. Thomas's and the people of Nevis aware of a particular campaign strategy that is being used. And I personally have an issue with it. A number of persons have reached out to me and said, Cleon, we are concerned about this. Simply because what I see happening, and this stems from the fact that the NIA has a recently appointed advisor, community advisor to the Premier. One would have thought that the NIA would have really taken into consideration of having expert advice as it relates to the economy and putting policies in place in order to drive the economy, because Nevis is in need of economic development in order to create revenue. We need new money circulating into the economy. So one would have thought that they would have used the opportunity to do that. Instead, they appointed a community advisor. I'm not going to get into the issue of qualifications and things like that, because I do believe as a young person myself that young people should be given the opportunity to perform once they are very well prepared for that. The challenge that I have is that this community advisor seem to only be focusing on the area of St. Thomas's, and it is concerning, because if it is that you are community advisor, then there are other communities within Nevis, there are other parishes, there are 5 other parishes. I don't understand why the focus must be on St. Thomas's. A little birdie picked me on my shoulder and told me it's because, the very same advisor is the person who perhaps is a potential candidate, and I say that cautiously because I don't see anybody declaring themselves or ever mentioned, and there has not been a launch. But I am told, it is alleged that that person will be the person who have some intention to run in Nevis 5 in the next local election. I am aware that promises are being made, and I have seen the person actively campaigning. As a matter of fact, I can go further and say that last year for Christmas, the said person or subject came to my office and dropped off a Christmas card. And whilst I thought it was noble, I didn't understand in what capacity, because it never said. I was very, very disgusted and upset that someone would come to my place of business just to drop off a business card. One would think that if you wanted to see me, then you would come to my home, as my home is in Cotton Ground and I'm very open and welcoming to persons. But for whatever reason, that person came to my home and to my office and to other homes throughout the area of St. Thomas's, and they were giving out Christmas cards. I would have seen them doing a number of activity, giving out vouchers and things like that. And so one can reasonably assume that that is the person who would be vying become the next candidate for the, I suppose it's the Concerned Citizen Movement Party in the upcoming elections. Now, I say all of this to say that there is a very dangerous game being played where people are using the government's resources in order to play politics in St. Thomas's, and it needs to stop. Now, if we had a properly constituted and independent Ronaldon, help me. Integrity in Public Life Commission, yes. Then that commission would have already been conducting some investigations, because we have civil servants out there, parading and campaigning and using quote unquote funds, which I assume must be public funds, in order to do a number of things in the constituency of St. Thomas's, and that cannot be right. I don't want to touch too much on it, but what I will say is this. For all those who are engaging in that type of activity, there will come a point in time where they are going to have to be accountable to the people of Nevis for those said funds, if it is that those funds are coming from the public treasury, from the public purse. And that is all that I will say on that. I just want people to be mindful that things not gonna go down so how people think it gonna go down. If it is that at the end of the day, when an investigation is launched, and we had a similar situation in that took place in Antigua, and so the precedents are there, that if it is that an investigation and inquiry proves that what is happening in St. Thomas's, that public funds are being used for political campaigning, then we are going to have some serious legal challenges here in Nevis. And I just want to put that out there, because I am watching, I am seeing what's going on, I am seeing the offers that people are getting for jobs, I'm seeing the vouchers going out, and I'm even seeing contributions to schools there in St. Thomas's, and I am just watching on, and I am looking, because at the end of the day, somebody would be held accountable if it is that the public funds, the public resources are being used to put any person, and any person who is on the government payroll, at an unfair advantage in the upcoming election. I am just saying that these are things that we are looking, because we are decent people, and I believe that if we are a decent people, that we should ensure that we uphold certain standards and certain integrity, and we do things in order. And to the good people of St. Thomas's, I want you all to know, when people come offering you assistance, okay? When they come to offer you assistance, whether it be handouts, whether it be monetary assistance, especially those of you who are residents of Nevis, I'm talking to my Spanish friends now, I want you to remember, you are paying it back. You are paying it back with the taxation, the increases in your water bill, the increases on your electricity bill, the increases in the planning legislation that we all know have to pay if we have to consider any development, whether personally or commercially. You have to pay it back. And so you're not really being given anything. I just want you all to know that. On a forum recently, I said to you that if somebody take $10 from you and they go to Best Buy and they buy you a box juice that costs $10 and they give it back to you, have you really gained anything? Can you say unequivocally that that was assistance? Did you benefit? And these are the questions that in St. Thomas's you have to ask yourself. Not only in St. Thomas's, but throughout the entire Nevis, in the other constituencies too. I see it happening. in St. John's, in St. Paul's, in St. James's, in St. George's. When people come to you offering you handouts and assistance for votes, you have to ask yourself, in the grand scheme of things, am I really benefiting? Is this assisting me? Because how can you take from me in one breath and come give me something else? You are not being advanced. So do not be fooled. I want my good people of St. Thomas's not to be fooled. There are a lot of trickery and trades in the system, and I see them. But you have to ask yourself, if you are able to give me $500 for a vote, but you continue to increase my water bill, something that I now have to pay perhaps for life, by $25 and $75, how far would that $500 take you? And these are the questions that you must ask yourself for the upcoming election. The good people of Nevis, you have to be careful. You have to be careful in what you do, because the next election is a crucial one. Nevis is at a crossroads. It's at a standstill. And development is needed. If we cannot put Nevis in line with other countries throughout the Eastern Caribbean and perhaps the world, then we are going to have a big problem here where the suffering will continue. Many of you young people who are coming out of school and coming back from universities who are looking for jobs, you won't be able to work in your country. Many of you, especially the good people of Bangods now, who are looking for a piece of the rock, you're looking for land, and you see the degeneration of your village where all of the lands are being sold to foreign investors and entities, and you can't even get a little piece of the rock in your village. You must ask yourself whether these things are right, whether they are benefiting you, and you have to make that decision as to what you are going to do on the polls on election day. And so these are things that I want you to consider. It was a pleasure for me to be here with you this evening, for you to hear some of my views, some of my thoughts, my passion, my commitment to the good people of Nevis 5, because I want to be able to walk and continue this journey with you where I can provide for you in a meaningful way. Many of you have seen my work. You have seen what I have been doing since elected, and it has not even been 2 years yet. I'm still young, still growing, but I continue to support you, to assist you where I can, even though I am not in government and I do not have access to the public purse. I continue to assist you. Those of you who I can counsel and give advice and support to, I continue to do so. But I am asking you, when the time comes, to let not my counsel fall on deaf ears. Let it not go to blind eyes. But I want you to remember, I am the same person who have been there with you, who have provided, who have listened to your cries, who have fought the good fight with you. And so I am asking you to remember, I am asking you to be loyal, and I am asking you to give me your support and to help me get the Nevis Reformation Party elected to government so that we can all better serve you in a meaningful way and in a way that you deserve. I wish to thank everyone who tuned in this evening for joining us on Legendary. This was our political night evening. I'm so happy for your support, for your love, for your loyalty, and as I continue to seek God's grace and guidance, and I continue to ask Him for strength so that I can grow from day to day and mature, not only in my thoughts, but in my representation, so that I can be best prepared to serve you with the highest level of quality and integrity. I wish to say that I thank you so much for your support. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I do love all of you, and I wish you all of the best. Thank you.
2020 Vision Radio, your number one radio station.
Hi, I'm Sister C of 20.
The Lowland Community Foundation, because we care. We are geared towards community outreach and development, youth empowerment, and entrepreneurial opportunities. The Lowland Community Foundation has sponsored and executed many projects in the St. Thomas Parish, and we will continue to serve you because we care. For pledges, donations, and more information, you are welcome to call or WhatsApp 1-869-762-5399, or you can email css.nevis5@gmail.com. That's css.nevis, the number 5@gmail.com. Legendary, promoting the vision of ordinary legends. Tune into 2020 Vision Radio every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. with the Honorable Cleon Stapleton Simmons and Desil Hamilton.
Legendary is a show promoting the visions of ordinary legends, and I am Honorable Cleo Stapleton Simmons along with my fabulous co-host Desil Hamilton.
I am Desil Hamilton. I'm excited as well to be here for Legendary, just to uplift and enhance people and show what people in our society are doing to uplift our country and the nation.
Call in live on WhatsApp via 869-669-7312. Our direct mobile number is 766-7312 and our landline number is 469-7953. Overseas callers can call in on 917-460-2187. Legendary, live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. on 2020 Vision Radio.
Just like you. If you take a look inside, you see the great things that people do. Some things are just